If you missed number 19, I want you to pause it and write down everything on this page. Alright, so here are my rules. Multiplying, you add the exponents. Dividing, you subtract them. If there's two exponents, you multiply them. Fix the negative exponent, you move it. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So let's get started on example 1. There's lots of exponents on the outside, so this means we're going to multiply it to everything on the inside. So a to the 3 times 3 is 9. B to the 2 times 3 is 6. And C to the 0 times 3 is 0. Now, anything to the 0 power is 1. So this C to the 0 goes away because it's just going to be 1. So the right answer is A to the 9th and B to the 6th. Okay, let's do example 2. You should have this written down. Everything that doesn't have an exponent gets a 1. So I'm going to put 1s on all these that don't have anything. This 2 is going to go to every exponent. So you should write this down. I have negative 1/2 to the 2nd power. I have x to the 2nd power. I have y to the 12th power. And z to the 16th power. That's my first parentheses. Again, I took 2 and I did 2 times 1, 2 times 1, 2 times 6, 2 times 8. Same thing goes in my second parentheses. I'm going to have 1/2 to the 2nd power, x to the 16th power, y to the 12th, and z to the 2nd. All right, let's do my whole numbers. If you have fractions, put them in parentheses. So I have negative 1/2. And I want it raised to the 2nd power. That's 0.25. I'm going to leave it as a decimal. You could change it to a fraction if you wanted to, but I'm going to leave it as 0.25. So this is really 0.25. I'm going to do this one also. I'm going to do parentheses 1/2 to the 2nd. And again, I got 0.25, so instead of 1/2 squared, I got 0.25. Okay, now my whole numbers, I'm going to multiply them. So I'm going to do 0.25 times 0.25. Now this one I am going to change to a fraction because all my answers are fractions. So I'm going to hit math, enter, enter. And I get 1/16. And then remember your rule is if they're multiplying, you add them. So if I add my x's, 2 plus 16 is 18. If I add my y's, 12 plus 12, no wait, what is that? Yeah, 12 plus 12 is 24. And if I add my z's, 16 plus 2 is 18. So the correct answer should be B for this one. If you missed number 19, I want you to write down the 4 problems, and I want to see your work and how you solve them. So you need to write down number 1, and then tell me what the answer should be. Same thing for 2 and 3 and 4. I also want you to tell me what you think the correct answer should have been and why you missed it. Number 20, pause it, write down everything on this page. Okay, for 20, you need to plug the variables into the equation. Now, this is kind of like number 11 if you have missed number 11. If there's only one thing to plug in, you can also do it in your calculator, and I'll show you how to do that. Like example 1 has a G and an H, so we can't do this on our calculator because you can only do it if there's one variable. So I got negative 4. Instead of a G, I'm plugging in 2. Every time you plug something in, you need to put it in parentheses. And for H, I'm plugging in a negative 4 to the 2nd. So you need to have that written down. Let's type it in. So negative 4, parentheses, 2 to the 3rd. And then another negative 4 in parentheses to the 2nd. And you should get negative 512 for number 20. Negative 512. Okay, example 2. These lines mean absolute value. So I'm plugging in a negative 2 squared. I put it in parentheses because it's a negative. So let's see what that is. Parentheses negative 2 squared minus 8. I got negative 4. So the absolute value of negative 4. Absolute value is always positive, so my answer is actually a positive 4. Let me show you how we could have just typed the whole thing in our calculator. Second 0, absolute value is the very first one, that ABS. So I'm going to hit enter. Now, if you have a different calculator, sometimes the actual bars will come up. It just depends on what kind of calculator you have. So we would type in -2 to the second minus 8. And we get positive 4. Okay? So example 2, the answer is positive 4. All right, let's do example 3. I have the square root of 1 to the third. For A, I'm plugging in a -2 to the fourth. For B, I'm plugging in a 6 to the second. When I'm doing square roots, I like to type in everything in the inside first. So I have 1 to the third. A is going to be -2 in parentheses to the fourth. B is 6 to the second. So I get 576. I want to take the square root of that. So second, that 576. And you get 24. So the answer to example 3 is 24. One more to do. For W, I'm plugging in the square root of 1/2. And I want that squared. So let's type that in. In parentheses, have the square root of 1/2. And I want that raised to the second. And I get 0.5. I'm going to change it to a fraction. Math, enter, enter. So the square root of 1/2 squared is 1/2. And the reason why squared and square roots cancel each other out. So if you missed number 20, I want you to answer the following 8 problems. Write down the question and the correct answer. So number 1, I want you to write down the question. I want you to write down how you're going to plug them in. I want to see 7 and in parentheses that you plug in a 2 squared, and then for Y that you plugged in parentheses the 3 squared, and for Z that you plugged in a 4 in parentheses. I want to see all of that written out. So pause it, do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pause it on this page, same thing, do 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you missed number 20, write down what you think the correct answer should have been and why you think you missed it.